in his journey of faith, Abraham encounters different challenges and obstacles that are tests of his heart, of his character, and also God is preparing him to receive what was promised to him. At this stage of his journey, Abraham is traveling with Lot, and their herdsmen got in a quarrel over the fields, over the grazing grounds. Abraham would have said, look, there is a lot of spaces for myself, and you actually go where I tell you. And look how Abraham solves a conflict. That's very interesting to see. Number one, he doesn't make this conflict his, as if to say, now he would have to fight and argue and have a major, ugly fight with his nephew. Instead, that's the conflict in between the shepherds. Okay, let's see how we can approach it. Abraham doesn't escalate it, making it a huge problem that now they will have to be at the throat of each other. Not at all. But he understands that any kind of a solution to this problem, if it's taken out of the right proportion, would be disastrous. Not only that, Abraham has a peaceful heart. He doesn't want to enter into a confrontation that would lead to breaking the communion. In this, we can see who Abraham is, what's his character deep within. Let's remember that Lot was his nephew, and it was Abraham who actually dragged him along. Instead of imposing on Lot, look at the noble heart, his gracious heart that Abraham has, telling Lot, okay, let's split, because he knows that at this stage they cannot travel together. Till this point was good, but maybe at this moment of our journey, it's good that we split. Very good. And this is something incredible that comes in at this stage, because Abraham tells Lot, you choose. If you would like to go left, I will go right. Or the other way around. The choice is yours. But wait a minute. Abraham should have chosen. But he steps down, saying, you choose. Whatever your decision, I will welcome it as coming from the Lord. It is hard for us to think that others may decide for us, and there could be God's finger in that. And what we find out later on, that sure enough, Lot chooses the better grounds. Because when he turned around, he looked about and saw how well watered the whole Jordan plain was as far as Zoar. Like the Lord's own garden, or like Egypt. Let's get it. It's mine. Of course, it's all about me. And my choice. Who cares about Abraham? This old man can figure on his own. So, Lot is very selfish. He jumps into what he thinks it's a great pick. Maybe he even thought inside, I outsmarted the old man. You see? Now, this is where the good stuff begins. And in this trick, so to speak, Abraham sees God's hand. He doesn't even rebuke Lot by saying, you scoundrel. I was dragging you all along, and now, instead of picking an inferior part, you actually choose the better one, knowing that this Jordan plain overflows. Not at all. Abraham lets it be. What is an important message here? That in this inferior, worse place that allotted to Abraham, he sees the finger of God. It's hard for us, especially if we are outsmarted, if we are tricked, if other people got ahead of us, we would be resentful. And instead, okay, Abraham starts journeying. But then we find out that those plains of Jordan were not so nice from the outside as initially we could have thought. Not everything that is so beautiful on the outside is within. Because we find out that the inhabitants of Sodom were very wicked in the sins they committed against the Lord. And now Lot will have hell of a life there. Instead, Abraham goes the other way, the inferior part, and doesn't rebuke Lot, doesn't curse him, doesn't get bitter about it, but he chooses an inferior, a lesser one, knowing that in this less, God's blessing rests upon him. Because so what? You get the better and beautiful and fertile grounds, and God's blessing doesn't accompany you. And instead, you may have a little less, and God is present there. That's the divine wisdom that today is very much missing. Because what would be today's approach? Get as much material goods as you want, and then you will be happy. How do you know? It could go actually the other way around, like in the lives of many people. Or you may have the inferior, little less, humbler, that's an important word, and God's blessing is there. Because where Abraham is going, this place near the terebinth of Mamre, where God would soon meet him once again, in this inferior, in this simple place. And Abraham, an old man, he doesn't have strength anymore. How oftentimes we fight for what is ours. And you could hear the words of Jesus Christ in the Sermon on the Mount. If someone wants to take your shirt, give him also a cloak. Basically, do not answer evil to evil. This word has, in a way, echo here with Abraham, who says, you want the better part? Go ahead. I'll take what God allotted for me, although you have tricked me. I'll take this one. And God is waiting for Abraham there, because even later on, there he built an altar to the Lord. Let's never compare with others. Let's not pretend that if we have something less, then it means we are on that inferior stage. We have no idea. Often those who supposedly have externally better, wealthier, more opulent and affluent, they might be so happy. Maybe they are actually getting ready to really quit this life, and they are drowning in addictions with issues. Let's take the inferior part, a smaller part, a little part. That's what Jesus Christ speaks about, the narrow gate. And the word that is being used here, a constricted road that leads to life. This wisdom is unknown today. We think the contrary. Greater car you have, better position, more beautiful house, that will lead to life. Well, listen, maybe that's the beginning of the end. On few occasions I've seen when people didn't really know how to handle the material goods, that was a total disaster, because they couldn't settle for a simpler, an inferior, a little thing. Not by chance, the Lord says, how narrow the gate and constricted the road that leads to life, and those who find it are few. because everybody wants to find the big, the huge, the spectacular, the gigantic door, the Titus arch, full of glory and prestige that will lead you to perdition. To find this wisdom, it's necessary to have the Spirit of the Lord, and to know that the Lord also tests us and places certain situations, because the fulfillment of the promise depends on what we choose today. It's difficult for us to actually choose not according to the world, but with Jesus Christ. We need to have His wisdom, knowing that ultimately, if we have gracious disposition, His favorable approach and look at us, and His gifts coming to us, hey, we can even live simpler, have less, be on the inferior ground, and you will be at peace and happy, instead of living on these opulent places where Sodom is, and hell of an ambience there. Oftentimes we choose, but again, our eyesight can be misleading. Did you see that Lot never asked the Lord for an advice? He chose on his own. Many times we choose on our own without even involving the Lord in a decision making, because we choose with our flesh, with our passions, with our desires. And afterwards we are surprised that things didn't work out. But wait a minute, did you ask God's advice and opinion, or you chose because it was more convenient, more appealing to our own senses? That's an indication. And narrow is the gate and the constricted road that leads to life. Let us ask for the Spirit to choose according to God's heart.